Hello, good afternoon.
Hello, Councilmember Preciado.
Yes, Tony, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for joining us. We're just getting things set up, so thank you for letting us know because it just
Okay,
says
we're gonna have the training maybe
yes in a little bit.
44. Okay, that's fine. So I'm gonna go ahead and mute myself.
Perfect.
And
Thank you.
I'll be listening.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Hello?
Hi, Mrs. Elliott. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, Tony.
We're still setting up, so I'm just gonna mute you for right now. But thank you. You're on. Thank you.
Okay, you are you're not very loud, but maybe that'll change when we get started.
Hello?
Hey, Rob. We have you on.
Hey. Hey, Tony.
We're still setting things up, so just bear with us, please.
Oh.
Thank you.
Oh, okay.
Are you guys set up yet?
No, we were having an issue with the main computer, so we're not able to stream it just yet. I don't think everyone's on yet, so just hopefully
Okay.
5 more minutes at worst.
Okay, well, hang on.
All right, looks like we're getting ready. About 2 more minutes once everything comes on. Sorry all for the delay.
Because we in there. Okay.
Am I on?
Now you are. I think we're ready. Avenal City Council, Humberto, you guys ready?
It's all right.
But I don't want to do it all that.
That's all right. Come here.
Did you want the picture, babe? You're all right. Okay.
Are you ready?
I think we're waiting for sound from the council. 1 second.
No.
Just make sure everyone keep the mics close to your mouth, please. With those masks, it's harder to hear. But we're finally
Testing, 1, 2, testing. Testing, 1, 2, testing.
we hear you.
Okay.
So are you ready?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Oh, you're ready. All right. So the law in California requires that every 2 years there be what's called an AB, that is Assembly Bill 1234 or 1234 training. That's what today's session is. It's a 2-hour training session, or it can be a 1-hour training session, which I'll expedite into 50 minutes tonight. And then there's a small exam at the end that you are required to take, but it need not be graded. So at the conclusion of this exciting moment here, you will take the exam, a real short, true, false, turn all that into the clerk. She keeps it for a period of years. I think it's 3 years. And also you'll sign the sign-in sheet. If there are elected officials and or standing committees, which are planning commission, those sort of things, if there are those sort of commissioners who are not here tonight, they will need to they can go online and take it with using the pamphlet that hopefully all of you have the pamphlet in front of you that's entitled AB 1234 Training, and it says Planning Commissioners Academy. We're using this booklet because it's a little more thorough, and the website you would go to is the Institute for Local Government. Under that, there's what you have in front of you will be what they have. They will have to read it, take the exam, and they have to then send it in and pay a fee, I think, to have it graded. But it's not much. I think it's $25, but that's why we do it this way. It saves you all a little bit of money. So are there any questions before we start?
No.
Okay, so there are two things you want to keep in mind when you are an elected official. The first one is the Brown Act. The Brown Act and it's referred to the Brown Act because a gentleman named Brown, not the governor, adopted this act several years ago, many decades ago. And it's gone through many, many changes over the years. The essence of the Brown Act is that all meetings have to be public. The public has a right to attend all meetings, and we'll get into that in a moment. The second thing we're going to look at will be conflicts of interest, which are pretty important. So I'm going to go through the Brown Act pretty quickly. There's a third category I want to touch upon with you, is that we are currently, by law, we are required to redraft a code of ethics for elected officials that you will adopt. The last one was adopted, and you should go to City Hall and get a copy of it. The code of ethics is what you've agreed to when you were sworn in, and there are things in there that you need to read, which I'll go over with you briefly. I want to digress for a moment. I thought I made something fairly clear when I attended the last meeting, but perhaps I didn't. So if I didn't, it's my fault. How do you place something on the agenda? And the agenda is part of the Brown Act. And the Brown Act requires that unless something is on the agenda for discussion and action, it cannot be discussed absent an emergency or an urgency. So under an urgency provision, to add something to the agenda, the following criteria must be met. An item appeared that has to be acted upon before the next regularly scheduled meeting. So that's how you get an urgency item on. So for example, you're applying for a grant and for some reason the mayor or someone forgot to sign it, and you have to get it in tomorrow, you can add that to the agenda. It requires a 4/5 vote. So basically unanimous vote. So 4/5 vote, put it on the agenda. It's then added to the agenda as an urgency item. There are 3 types of meetings under the Brown Act. The first one is a regular meeting, 72-hour notice is required, has to be posted as per your requirements, which you do. Then there's what's called a special meeting, which only requires 24 hours notice. And then there's an emergency meeting, and an emergency meeting can be done with no notice to anyone other than the media. And the only difference between an emergency meeting, a special meeting, and a regular meeting is that an emergency meeting, you cannot go into closed session. It's like if you have a pipe that breaks, as we had years ago, and we had to go into an emergency meeting. Now, how do you get things on the agenda? The city, as with all cities in California, follows an abbreviated form of Robert's Rules of Order. It's not technically Robert's Rules of Order, it's an abbreviated form. And under the rules that the city follows, the law in California is as follows. For cities and districts and planning commissions, the court always adopts the following law. It's substance over form. So as long as the item was properly on the agenda, as long as everybody was given an opportunity to discuss it, the fact that your motion is all messed up or something, the court would look past that and say, well, what was the substance of the motion and was that in fact passed? So it's always substance over form. So the only thing you can act upon in public is things within your jurisdiction. So for example, you would not be able to make a comment on the Middle East war or something like that. That's not within the city's jurisdiction. It has to be within the city's jurisdiction. So that's the only limitation. The way the Robert's Rules of Orders, the rules, the guidelines we follow are as follows. The mayor, working in conjunction with staff, generally the city manager or the city clerk, sets the agenda. Now in reality, the staff usually sets it and that sort of thing. If any one singular one of the members of council, that is not the mayor, if any one singular member of the council wants an item on the agenda, and if the mayor says, no, I don't want that on the agenda, then that person wanting it on the agenda makes a motion to include it to the next agenda, not tonight's agenda, to the next agenda. So that motion would be, I would like to add to the next agenda X, Y, Z. It would require a second and a vote. If 3 of you vote, or the majority of you vote to put it on, then it's on the agenda. So mayor working with city manager, or motion, second, majority vote. Does everybody understand that?
Yes.
Okay, good, because that's, for some reason, I've been asked that question a couple of times. You can add to your agenda an item that would say future agenda items, whereby at every council meeting, someone could say, oh, I would like to add to a future agenda item the following. I don't recommend you do that because you guys have on your agenda council's time to address the public, and I don't want to get confused here. So when it's your turn to address, you can turn to staff and say, I would like to have a future item on the agenda. You don't need a special section for it. And I know there was some discussion last time. I think, you know, Mike Schulte, who's on with this, he likes to have it on there. I don't care if you do. Here's why I don't like it, is because it generally generates a whole topic that the public might want to come in and say, you know, we want to talk about the potholes, we want to do this and that sort of thing. And generally what we like instead is that the public would bring it to staff's attention or bring it to one of your attentions, and then you would add it to the agenda. Some people, when they put it on there, they think the public can add it to the agenda and we get bogged down. You can add it to your agenda. I would prefer that you do it under your time to address council and public. So that's when you would do it. As far as realignment goes, I think I went over that last time, but I'll do it again. You have bylaws that provide that you have a mayor, may pro tem, or picked by a majority of the council. If you want to add realignment to your future agenda before the November election, the only basis upon which would be within your jurisdiction would be to modify the bylaws, those sort of things. So I think I've covered that a couple of times, so I won't bore you with that anymore. But I would recommend that each of you get a copy of the ethics that you're bound by. It does require that we treat each other with respect and we run orderly meetings. So returning then to the Brown Act, I've talked to you about the agenda. You have to post the agenda 72 hours, 24 hours, or an emergency. And if you want a special meeting, that requires a motion, a second, and a vote. And there has to be a topic you can put, it can be thereafter conducted like any other meeting. it has to have the same agenda. Each agenda, as your agenda tonight has, you have to have all the items on the agenda are set by statute, most of them. The consent calendar, the closed session, public's time to address, and those sort of things. So we've talked last time, I think I mentioned to you, but I want to go over it again. What is a meeting? You have to be careful. You cannot do a serial meeting, and that serial meeting means council member A contacts council member B and council member C, and they want to talk about city business, and they do it either through email or telephone or over a cup of coffee or at someone's house. You can't do that. That's called a serial meeting. So if a majority of you meet to discuss the business of the city and it's not on the agenda and it's not at a posted meeting, it's a violation of the law and it's a misdemeanor in the state of California. So you don't want to do that. So sometimes, I don't know if I've done it with you folks yet, but sometimes I might send out an email to everyone and I always put at the bottom, do not respond. So sometimes I might just give you some information, or Melissa might just give you information. You know, if you have clarification of it, that's fine, but you don't want to respond by saying, oh yeah, I agree with that, or oh yeah, I like that. So we can do emails and or communications one way, but you shouldn't then discuss it among yourselves until it goes on to the agenda. Everybody got that one?
Yes.
Great. All right. So as it relates to the Planning Commission, I just want a topic for you folks. Since you're what's called a standing committee. Now, if we have ad hoc committees, years ago when the theater burned down, we formed an ad hoc committee that went out and got some ideas, etc. An ad hoc committee means it's not a standing committee, it's only for a limited purpose and a limited time period. That ad hoc committee would not be subject to the Brown Act. Planning commissions are, other recreation would be is another one, any standing committee. So in planning, what happens all the time in planning is as developments come into town, someone might want to take you to lunch and say, you know what, I'm going to build a Walmart out on the corner there, and I'd like to talk to you, the planning commissioner, about it. You should not go to that meeting. If you come to the meeting with a predisposed position, that is, I'm for it or I'm against it, and you may very well be in your own mind, you just don't want to express it. But if you come to the meeting with a predisposed disposition, that is a position on it, then you cannot vote, because due process requires that the person presenting the proposal to the commission or to the city is entitled to a fair body that has theoretically, like a jury, no built-in bias. So I want to make sure you understand that. So you should always avoid. Over the years, we've had developers who have, tracked down council members and all of that, and you just don't want to do it. And I'll get into gifts in a minute and tickets to Disneyland and things such as that. I did mention to you not to scare you or not to be gruff, but I want to make sure I emphasize that this Brown Act is very serious, that if you violate the Brown Act, it is in fact a misdemeanor, and the DAs are now very active. Some counties now have a special district attorney section, and all they do is watch all the districts and all the cities and all of the public entities and make sure they're not violating the Brown Act. And we're seeing more and more prosecutions for that. So you want to be extremely careful of that. You do not want to talk about non-agendized items. No matter how much you want to, you can't. So if you have something you want to discuss, it has to be on the agenda. And I've already told you how you get on. You ask the mayor to put it on. If the mayor won't, you make your motion, get a second. And if 3 of you vote, it's on the agenda for the next meeting. Can't go on that night's meeting. If you talk about non-agendized items, that is a violation of the Brown Act, and that is a misdemeanor. So we are now operating under a law that requires that we self-report. So if in fact there's a violation, technically either me or whoever observes it is supposed to report it. Now, the way we would report it though, is we would contact you first and say, hey, wait a minute, you guys, you know, I told you don't talk about that and you kept talking about it. So you need to cure it. You need to go back on the next meeting and put it on the agenda and unwind whatever it is you did. In other words, if you talked about it, if you discussed a non-agendized meeting and took action, that action's void. We'd have to put it on the agenda and disclose to the public that it should not have been discussed nor voted upon. If you fail to do that, that's when the self-reporting kicks in. Is that like, if you tell me so-and-so is violating the Brown Act, I have to investigate it. If I conclude you did, there's a 30-day cure period. If you can't cure it, then I have to report it. And same with you. If someone tells you that, you have to do the same. So it's pretty serious, and you just don't want to do that. And I can, in your packet that you have, there's, if you look on page 30, not now, but later tonight, you'll see where a planner violated the Brown Act and was prosecuted criminally and paid a large fine. I can tell you a story about a planning commissioner in Clovis, California, who got involved in this sort of thing. He was criminally prosecuted and spent a few days in jail and paid a $5,000 fine. So they're kind of taking it pretty seriously. Now, we can go into closed session. So we're still under the Brown Act. We're still on the agenda. And so we have the Brown Act that says everything has to be open, everything has to be agendized. Now we're going to go into closed session. Closed session, it's the only time we can discuss a matter outside the presence of the juror, outside the presence of the public. The content of what is discussed in closed session, though, is confidential. So unless we announce that we took action in closed session, which I'll get to in a moment, whatever is discussed in closed session must remain in closed session. So if you have a personnel problem, someone complains about John Doe in Public Works, and you have a complaint, and it's on the agenda, and you want to address that specific complaint about John Doe gets 24 hours notice so that he has the right to come in and understand what the complaint was and tell you his side. He is then dismissed out of the meeting and you folks can talk about it. Now, any action, this is under the personnel exception, any action you take under personnel is confidential. You cannot disclose it to anyone. So if you say, well, we're gonna demote him or whatever, you can't talk about that in public. So if you have a specific complaint about a specific employee, that employee has 24 hours notice right to appear in closed session, or if the employee elects, can have it discussed in open session if they want. Now, most will do it in closed session. So that's the most common exception, is the one we call personnel. That is not to be confused with personnel evaluation. So you want to review a whole department, Public Works. If you think Public Works as a whole, without getting into specific allegations about a person in Public Works, but if you think the department itself isn't doing its job, we put that under what's called personnel evaluation. We don't complain about a particular individual, but we talk about the department and say we think they're just not doing their job. And then you give direction, presumably, to the city manager to investigate it, or if it's something greater than that, to my office, and we investigate it. So you have the personnel exception, personnel evaluation, potential litigation, that's where we get sued, or we're thinking about suing someone. Those all fall under the potential litigation exception, and there's a dog barking in the background. Anyway, so you have to have your attorney present for the litigation. So, because potential litigation involves lawyers, so your city attorney or a representative of my office has to be present during a closed session for litigation. The next item would be labor negotiations, and I see you have that on your agenda tonight. So that's an exception. You can talk about labor negotiations. the only kicker there is you can't really talk about in labor negotiations about a particular individual's salary. That's not allowed in labor negotiations. Labor negotiations are where you have a bargaining unit, whether it be the police or public works or whoever, however the bargaining units are broken down. They're saying, we want, $10 more for uniforms, or we want a gas credit card, or whatever it is. So labor negotiations are designed to talk about what will ultimately be your memorandum of understanding, but you really are not to talk about a particular salary. So confidential, it's all confidential, and it cannot be discussed. And I really recommend you don't do that. Anything you are given during the meeting. So if in the meeting I were to hand out a packet to you, not in closed session, that's different. I'll get to that. If I were to hand out a packet to you for open session, the public's entitled to that packet. And we received letters, I know, complaining about the police department, some about the budget. That letter is received and put into the public record. You are not required to read it. You're just required to say, we received a letter from so-and-so, and the clerk is directed to make it part of the record. If I give you something in closed session, you give it back. You don't get to keep it. You have to give it back. So, or anything in closed session that's not to be made public, you can look at it, but you have to give it back. So that's pretty much an overview of how you run your meetings. Meetings, in my mind, should be run quickly and swiftly. They should deal with only jurisdictional matters of the city. You can talk about events, et cetera, but it's not a social gathering, and nor is it a time to, if you're mad at one council member about something, that you should not address that in open session. That's something that you two of you should try to work out together. Or work it out through the city manager, or if you want through our office. If you believe someone is violating some of the bylaws or Brown Act or anything, you should bring that to my attention so that we can investigate it and report back to you. You should not do the investigation on your own. So does anybody have any questions on the agenda or closed sessions or things such as that?
I have one question, Mr. Farley. Is there a appropriate or specific time to, for example, if we want to place items on the agenda, is there a particular or, I would say appropriate time to make a motion for the item to be included on the agenda?
Okay, so let's talk about, it's a good question, and thanks for asking it. So remember, we're talking about it on the agenda, two different points in time. Time A is for tonight's agenda. If you wanted it like on tonight's agenda, the only way you could get it on tonight's agenda, it has to be an urgency item, which means it has to be acted upon before our next regularly scheduled meeting, and it requires a 4/5 vote. And so you would just bring that up. If you knew about it, theoretically you should tell the city manager, but if you just happen to know it, you would say, I'd like to add this for tonight's agenda, but it has to be on those, you have to make those findings. Now, if you want it on a future agenda, when it's your time to address the count, when it's, let's see, on your agenda tonight, it's so where are you guys? So under 12, so you have closing comments, announcements, or correspondence. So if you have, when they go around the table and say, do you have anything you'd like to say? You'd say, yes, I'd like to add to the next agenda ABC. The mayor says no, you then say, then I need to make a motion to add that to the next agenda. Now you can't discuss it. You can't discuss it at tonight's meeting, but you just say, I'd like to make a motion to add this to the agenda for whatever the next date is. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, so just for clarification, that would be during closing comments. Is that the most appropriate time to make this kind of motion?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Prior to adjournment. Yeah. Now there may come a time. Let's just be practical here. Let's say John Doe or Mary Smith stands up in the audience and says, I'm really sick and tired of the potholes on King Street. And, you can't discuss it, but you can say, yeah, I don't like them either. You could, at that point, under something like that, saying, I'd like to add that to a future agenda. That is, what is our policy regarding fixing potholes, and or what is it on a list? Usually Public Works keeps a list of what they're going to be doing over the next with regards to roads. So if, there's nothing magical about waiting. So if the opportunity presented itself when the public's addressing, rather than discuss it, and you think it's an item of importance, you could do it then. Did that make sense?
Yes, but you can, I think I had some understanding when the public addresses the council during public comment, that's when us as council members cannot comment, right? Is that the?
Right. Okay. I should have gone over that. Yes, you're right. So what happens is you can answer, you can, how do I say this? You cannot discuss it. You cannot say, I'm sick and tired of those potholes and we've advised Public Works 20 times to fix it. No, you don't do that. You can say, oh, you're talking about the pothole over there. Oh yeah, I think I know that pothole. Why don't we put that on the agenda for next meeting? So in other words, you can answer the question, or you can give direction, but you just can't have any discussion regarding it. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Because that's a good point. I'm glad I should have brought that up. That's an excellent point.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any other questions regarding the agenda, how you get it on the agenda, what you can talk about, what you can't talk about? Sounds like I'm in space. I guess not. All right. So one thing I do want to emphasize before I leave this is that, you want to have decorum when you're trying to get on.
Councilman Preciado, do you have something to say?
Yes, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Hello? Yeah, I have a question. Okay, you said that the proper time to address staff is during closing comments, but according to the minutes, during closing comments, there's no action to be taken. So can you clarify that? Because you did say that the perfect time is to address staff, but there's no item in the agenda where there is time to address staff, only closing comments.
Right. So in your closing comments, so you're not taking any action, you're just giving direction. There's a big difference between taking action. If, for example, during your closing comments, you said, I'm going to direct staff tonight to fix the pothole on King Street, and they said, okay, we'll go do it. That's taking action. Versus, I would like to put on the future agenda potholes on King Street. You're just giving direction. So you're allowed to give direction. You're just not allowed to take action. But you can, if you want, as I said, there's no problem putting on your agenda a topic that's entitled future agenda items. And some cities do that. This is the personal, it's up to you folks, but my personal hesitation with that is sometimes the city, members of the public, when they address you, they will say, you've got a topic on here for future agenda items. I'd like to add, contributions to whatever. And another one that stands up, and you sometimes spend literally an hour or more with people wanting to put things on the agenda. It's not the public's time to put something on the agenda, but they are entitled to comment on anything on the agenda. So that you can't say, well, wait a minute, I don't want you to talk about that, because they have the right to. So my only personal hesitation of it from years of experience is that you wind up having people from the public believing it's their opportunity to air all of their grievances with you and put that on the agenda. So what I like to recommend is that when you have your closing comments, if you want something on a future agenda, you would do it then. And if the mayor were to say no, then you would ask that a motion be made. You're not taking any action, you're only giving direction. And that's the big distinction. Did I answer that?
Yes, it did.
But you can, but I want to make it clear. I want to make it very, very clear to you. If you folks want to put on your agenda, future agenda items, that's perfectly fine. And some lawyers recommend that you do it that way. I'm just telling you, I've been doing this for a long, long time. And I'm just telling you that there will come a point in time where you might be spending an hour with people saying, well, I'd like to put on the agenda a contribution, or I'd like to put on the agenda this. And you'll spend a lot of your time saying, well, that's really for us, not for you. But anyway, but you can do it if you want.
Yeah.
No problem.
Yeah, yeah, because I understand that situation because, you know, the only time the public can address council is during public comment. And like you mentioned before, we're doing city business. It's not public business at that time. So that also, I believe, needs to be clarified that, you know, public shouldn't interfere when it's future agenda items, which is strictly directed to council.
I'm not sure I understand the questions. Can someone help me because I'm having a hard time hearing? Can someone tell me what the question was?
We couldn't hear it either in here. It was not very clear.
Can you just, what is the question again? Alvaro, can you tell me what the question was again, please?
Well, what I was trying to say is that that the public shouldn't try to bring agenda items when let's say there's an agenda, there's an item for future agenda items. The public should know that it's not. They shouldn't, you know, bring that up because they can only address council during public comments. Correct?
Right. So I think your question is the public cannot ask that agenda items be placed on the agenda. That is correct. And that's what I was trying to say is if you have but the public has the right to comment on anything on the agenda. So technically they could say, you know, I'd like to put this on the agenda, and you're going to have to say no. And it puts everybody kind of in an awkward spot. That's all I'm saying. But, you know, if you guys want to try it for a while and there's no awkwardness with it, I mean, go for it. I mean, but you end up, I'm just going to tell you, eventually you will end up having a public believe that they want to talk about contributions to Boy Scouts, to Little League, to the boxing club, to, you know, why are the bathrooms in the park locked? I want to put you'll end up spending a lot of time telling them, well, I can't do that, I can't do that, I can't do that. But your question was the public cannot add things to the agenda. The answer is that is correct. They can go to a council member and say, hey, would you mind trying to get on the agenda the following? And then you would bring that up. So all I was saying was if someone during public's time to address brought up something that triggered in your mind, something that you think is a valid topic that you would like to discuss at the time of the next meeting, you could say, well, you know what, you know, Melissa or Mayor, we'd like to put that on the agenda for next time. I think that's a topic we should discuss. And if they agree, you're on. If they don't agree, then you say, I'd like to have a motion and we add that to the next agenda. I was just using, there's nothing dogmatic or set in concrete that you have to do it at closing. There may be times during the meeting when a topic comes up that you could say, I'd like to add that to the future agenda. I mean, so I'm just saying there are opportunities to do it other than that if the moment arises. Okay?
Okay, I think that's better because, like you say, as the situation arises, there'll be a time where there's that it can be asked to be placed on the agenda for future agenda items.
Correct. You can do it. You could, again, if it is a topic that someone brings up during public's time to address, the public can't put it on, but it may be a topic that you're interested in and you think, let's put that on the agenda. That's perfectly fine to do it then. You don't have to wait. I'm just saying if the opportunity doesn't present itself through the duration of the meeting, then at the end when it's your time to address, you would just say, because you're addressing the council, you're addressing the public, just saying, you know, I'd like a future agenda item to be blah, 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 blah. And you're not taking action, you're just giving direction. That's the distinction. Okay?
Just for clarification.
That is very clear.
Okay? Yeah.
Mr. Farley, so if council, under item 6, under mayor and council members successor agency items for consideration, sorry, I'm stuttering. That would be a time too where if the mayor or mayor pro tem or council wanted to add something, that would be appropriate to add there as well?
Right.
Okay.
anytime you have the floor, you could be talking about cleaning bathrooms and say, oh, you know what, that reminds me. I want to talk about putting a new roof on the recreation building. I mean, there is no prohibition from you making that moment, but I'm just saying, if there's not a logical moment during the meeting for you to do it, you would do it at your time when you address council, public, and communication and correspondence. That's what the whole point is. And again, you're not taking action, you're giving direction. If you believe it's too confusing, add future agenda item to your agenda. That's up to you folks. You can, matter of fact, you could vote on that tonight if you wanted to. I'm just saying, in my experience, you get bogged down with a lot of public thinking they can add, and then you end up spending a lot of time telling them no, and they're thinking, well, who do you think you are? So kind of honestly, from a PR perspective, it might put you in an awkward spot, but that's up to you folks. That's just my recommendation. There's not a requirement either way.
Thank you.
Okay, did I clarify? Okay. So public records, I'm going to run through this real quick because we're running short on time tonight. The public records are basically, we define the Public Records Act as by its exceptions. So everything is a public record basically, except drafts, personnel files, and those sort of things are not. You folks really wouldn't worry about that. Anytime we get what's called a PRA, Public Record Act request, it's usually referred over to our office and we respond to it accordingly. But you need to understand something is that your personal emails, if you have a personal email account and you discuss public business, the city's business on it, that email could technically be under the Public Records Act. There's a new case out on that where your private email, if you're discussing public business, that could in fact result in there being you'd have to make it part of the public record. So I just want to caution you, you use your personal email only for personal things, not city. I'm gonna tell you a quick story real fast. I don't do social media for a lot of reasons. One is I'm not savvy enough. And secondly, I can't believe anybody would be interested in what I bought at the grocery store. But if you are a social media hound, there's a case we had once in another city where there was a question as to whether or not the city employee was texting at the time of an accident. And the police, the CHP investigating it had determined that he was not. And then he, on his Facebook account, sent out a note to his friends saying, man, I dodged a bullet. I was texting and they didn't catch me. And so that was obviously a pretty stupid thing and it became evidence and we settled that case. But my point is, if you use your social media for public purposes, you're subjecting yourself to that being produced, okay? Just be very, very careful with that. So conflicts of interest is the next thing. You fill out your Form 700. You all know that, and you have to be careful. Everything I'm talking to you about is in the packet you have. So if I go through it real quickly, feel free to go back to it if you have questions, or always feel free to call me anytime at my office, anytime. I'll be happy to answer questions for you. But a conflict of interest, there are two types of conflicts. There's a conflict of interest that's economic, that is financial. If you have a financial conflict of interest, that if you have a financial interest in something that the city is considering, you are disqualified from participating and you cannot participate at all. And as a matter of fact, so you are disqualified. And that means you have to leave the podium or the dais up there where you're sitting. Well, we're doing Zoom these days, but if we were still in the room, you'd have to leave the room and not participate at all if you have a financial interest. And if you or your immediate family, which is generally defined as children, spouses, etc. There's other conflicts of interest, which we call an appearance of conflict of interest. So if in fact you have a piece of property and the city is thinking about zoning it in a favorable way to you. In other words, you cannot participate in that at all. Or if you have a cousin or something that has a piece of property and he's asked you to help get it zoned correctly, you can't do that. So you have to be very, very, very careful about your conflicts. Anytime you think you might have a conflict, I just suggest you either call me or the city manager or whatever, and I would be happy to walk you through it. But economic conflicts of interest are the most common type. Let me see, hang on a second. So by the way, and Mike Schulte brought this up for me. I had forgotten this. We had a city that had this problem come up. If you have an economic conflict of interest, you are disqualified. You're not just conflicted out. So if you're disqualified, you don't count as the quorum. So if you had 3 people, which is a quorum, and you had an economic financial interest, you don't have a quorum on that issue. You can't vote. If you weren't disqualified, if you just had a potential conflict of interest, non-economic, you just would have to abstain, and we would still have a quorum, and the vote would be either 1-1-1, 1-4, 1 against, 1 abstain, or 2-0, 1 abstain. But if you're disqualified, you are completely disqualified. So that topic cannot be discussed if we fall below the quorum status. So that's just something to keep in mind as well. There are if you have a business interest that has over $2,000 or real estate of over $2,000, things such as that, or you own a certain percentage of a business, all those things have to be disclosed. If you receive income of $500 or more, and we're voting on something that deals with that, the person or entity that's paying you that, you have to disclose that. So that's again, conflicts of interest are driven predominantly by financial. There was a case you'll see on page 56 of this packet that was a pretty big case of notoriety, where someone sat on a planning commission and the state got a grant for, I think it was to extend water and sewer to an area that was owned by that person. I think it was a hotel or a restaurant, and they voted on that. All they did was vote on the grant, and they were fined $4,000 because they had an economic interest, an indirect economic interest. So anytime, if there's a zoning change and you own property, or we're voting on something from someone that pays you money, get away from it. You do not want to accept tickets to Disneyland, or those are all, you can't do those sort of gifts. Now, that would create in other words, if I'm trying to do a development, I come in and say, hey, I got some great tickets for the Super Bowl, here they are. No, you can't do that. Don't do that. So you'll see where someone was fined $3,000 for that if you review the packet. Gifts are another thing you want to be careful of. Not gifts that you get from your friends and family, but if somebody that has business before the city gives you a gift of $50, you have to report it on your Form 700. And or more than, they change the amount every year. I think it's $375 now. If you get more than $375, you have to disqualify yourself. So be careful and leery of getting gifts. We don't have transportation issues in our town, but you're not allowed to accept any sort of gratuity for any kind of public transportation. You have to pay your way. So if someone says, oh, you're a council member, I'm gonna give you a free ride on the bus, cannot happen. You cannot have any interest in a contract that the city is involved in, and that's a big one. That's 1090 violation. A 1090 violation is absolute, there are no exceptions. So for example, if the city enters into a contract for towing, tow cars with John Doe Towing Service, and you own an interest in that, the contract is void. You have to give back your towing company has to give back all the money to the city, and the city gets to keep the benefit of the bargain. So in other words, the contract, the city gets to keep all the benefit. but you have to give back every penny that you've earned. Plus, again, it's a misdemeanor offense. Could be a felony if it's large enough. So you just want to avoid doing business with this. Years ago, we had a council member who wanted to give us land for free, and so we could build the public works, and he could not do that because it was a 1090 violation. So I had to write an opinion on it. It's kind of sad, but it's a gift to the city. So his economic benefit is that he can write that gift off on his taxes. And so that's you can't do that. You want to stay away from any sort of contracts that the city does. I'm just telling you, that's a big, big, big thing. You must return the money, but the city gets to keep all the benefits received at no cost. There's a topic that I need to touch on real quickly, and then I'll be through with a couple closing comments. Incompatible offices. You can't hold two offices in the jurisdiction of the city which are incompatible. When we had a hospital board, we still have one. You technically, that if the city is giving money to the hospital to support it, you're now in an incompatible position. If you're on the hospital board and the city council, you can't do that. So you have to resign one or the other. You can't have incompatible positions. And I think that's the only one that I can think of that we've had in your city. So I wouldn't worry too much about it, but just keep that in mind. Reimbursement of expenses. You have to always submit your vouchers for reimbursement. If you take your spouse to a public funded function, you have to pay for the spouse's lodging and or food. You cannot charge that to the city. So if you buy dinner, as crazy as it sounds, and you're authorized to have dinner on the city's ticket, and your wife or friend is with you, you should put them on a separate ticket, because we cannot pay for any spouse or children's costs. I will tell you how ludicrous it is, but I've never known anybody to enforce it. Let's say, for example, you're checking into the Holiday Inn and you have your spouse with you, and you get a double bed, and the hospital has a charge for a couple of $100. If you're a single, it's only $90. Technically, you're supposed to pay that $10 difference, but I've never known anybody to enforce that. But that's how technical it gets. By the way, the gift limit is $50 or more per year per source, and you cannot accept more than $500 per year per source. So it's $500 now. So if you get a gift of $50, you have to report it on your Form 700. You cannot accept a gift of $500 or more. If the person you received a gift from, if it's a valid gift, comes before the council, you have to disqualify yourself. You cannot participate in anything regarding that. You cannot use you cannot use city or public assets for your own benefit. Mass mailings, photocopying, telephones. Those you can't use them for your own personal. Like you can't come into the office and say, "Hey, would you mind, scanning and emailing this to my boss?" You can't do that. So stay away from that. Meals are a gift, by the way. I don't know if I've told you this story, but somebody once went to the Vintage Press in Visalia and ran up a tab of about $500 for a council member. The city didn't pay for it, but the council member got a $200 bottle of wine, and that's a gift that you have to report, and you don't want to do that. I mean, you can, but I just recommend you don't. You can't, if you're asked to speak at a ceremony of some sort as the council member, you're not allowed any honorarium. You're not allowed to take it. We'll give you $50 for your time if you come speak to my group. You can't do that. No honorariums. And if you do get it and you forgot about me telling you not to get it, return it immediately or donate it to a charity and you'll be all right. Okay, so I ran through that pretty quickly, but the real highlights are the agenda. That's why I spent most of my time on that. And this would conclude your AB 12, 1, 2, 3, 4 training. You'll take the test. It need not be graded. You'll turn that in. You'll sign the attendance. If you're on the phone, just we'll acknowledge that you were on the phone. We'll have the city clerk enter your name as attending by phone. I didn't get into teleconferencing meetings. There is a provision in the code that if you were going to be away and you wanted to appear by teleconferencing, there's a special posting requirement you have to go to. So you're staying at the Holiday Inn in at Los Angeles on 3rd Street. We have to post it and it has to be open to the public. I didn't get into that because under this COVID-19 emergency, we're operating under emergency rules, which allows us to meet the way we're meeting now. But normally what we're doing now wouldn't be prohibited, but we would have to post for it. I just want to conclude by saying one final thing. I've been your city attorney from almost the inception. I've been going for a long time, 30 some odd years. And I've worked with every city manager, just so that you know, I've been around a little bit. We've had divided councils in the past. They're difficult. My job is to carry out lawful directive from the majority of the council. I don't pick sides. I don't play politics. Whoever gives me a three majority vote, I do that. Now, I just want to point out, though, that I could tell from the last couple meetings that I've attended. I don't attend night meetings much anymore because I attended about 8,000. You want to, you may not like your fellow council member, but you don't want to exhibit that in public. It's part of your code of ethics. You show the proper decorum. If you don't like the mayor, you don't like the election, there's a provision in the law that says we wait till the next election and you can have your day and you can have your opportunity. If you don't like the city manager, you take it up with her privately. You don't do it in public. If you don't like the public works director, you take that to the city manager. So if you don't like the public works director, you go to the city manager, who then tells the public works director where the complaint is. If you don't like me, you go to the city manager, she tells me. In other words, you have to limit your anger, if you will, in public, because you're running the government. You're not in, you don't want to exhibit this. What appears to me, you guys are going down a divided council, which is fine. 3-2 votes are fine, but let's do it with respect and decorum if we can. Does anybody have any questions of me?
Nope. No questions.
I must have done a good job.
Excellent. Thank you.
All right. So I'll check back in with you in a bit, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm not sure if anybody's there. This is Mike Schulte. I just thought I'd see if my audio was working.
We hear you loud and clear, Mike. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, great. I'm not sure. I know Mike Farley stepped away to deal with a couple of things, so he may not make it back for closed session, but I'll be here for the remainder of the night. So.
Perfect. Yeah, we'll be picking it right back up in about 5 minutes.
All right. I'm gonna mute myself just so nobody has to hear me clanging cans and bottles.
Okay.
coming
I
down.
see Avenal City Council. I don't know if that. Oh, okay. Okay. Who?
Mr.
Mr. Preciado.
Maybe he's coming down to join the meeting? I don't know.
Okay, very good. So we have,
Sorry, 560.
very good. Okay. So we'll proceed. If you'll read that paragraph, please, City Clerk. Thank you. So at this moment, we will be going into closed session to A, consider with labor negotiations, agency designated city manager and city attorney, employees. So. Are we isolated and?
No,
Okay.
not yet. Umberto has to throw you guys into the separate room, so just give him a second.
Okay, thank you, Tony. Okay. Thank you. Oh, okay. Thank you.
Just real quick, I guess I have to do it on my end. Melissa, who else needs to be on the call? Just legal counsel?
It would be Mr. Schulte, and if Mr. Farley joins.
Yeah, I'll throw him in. Even if he's active or inactive, he'll be in the room then. Is that it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct.
Sorry, Tony, the only exception would be if Mr. Preciado joins the meeting again, he would be included.
Oh, you're right. I guess he dropped out of the call. Okay, then. Very well. 1 second.
I'll text Alvaro.
Heck. Bertha, are you having issues getting into the breakout room?
He left already, Tony.
Oh, someone needs to push OK to join the breakout room.
Okay.
I was wondering why he wasn't answering me.
Yeah, just hit enter. Thank you, senor. So we're back to our regular city council meeting, and during our closed session, we had 3 items that were voted on. Do you want me to read or would you like to read the 3 different items that were voted on?
Okay, sure.
Okay.
Certainly. Again, there were 3 items, 3 different resolutions that were approved in closed session. The first would be Resolution 2020, and it's a resolution of the City Council of the city supporting and approving an offer to the Avenal Peace Officers Association as per request for fiscal year 2021. The motion was made by Councilmember Ramirez, seconded by Councilmember Hernandez, and approved. It was 3-0, 2 absent. Resolution 2020-31, a resolution of the city supporting and approving an offer to the employee designated negotiating teams, being the bargaining units 1, 2, 3, and 5, as per request for fiscal year 2021. Motion by Councilmember Ramirez, seconded by Councilmember Hernandez. It was approved on a 3-0, 2 absent. Resolution 2020-32, a resolution of the City of Avenal authorizing the submittal of an application to the San Joaquin Valley Air Pollution Control District Public Benefit Grants Program regarding a purchase of vehicles. That was approved on a motion by Councilmember Ramirez, seconded by Councilmember Hernandez. It was a 3-0 vote, 2 absent.
Thank you. So we move on with item number 5, consent calendar. A, consider City of Avenal successor agencies approval of minutes for June 25th, 2020. And 5B, consider financial statement and warrants for June. Is there any changes, comments? And if not, we need a motion to approve consent calendar. Okay, we have first. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, first and second.
Councilman Hernandez. Councilman Ramirez.
Aye.
Mayor Ovalle.
Aye. Okay, 3-2 absent. Very good. Okay. So we will move on to item number 6, which is mayor and council member successor agency items for consideration. A, consider an emergency ordinance ratifying action taken on June 25th, 2020 to make mandatory all commercial businesses, store owners, and other working in places of business within the city limits of Avenal to wear appropriate facial masks, and further require the public customer patrons to wear facial coverings while in stores, places of business due to COVID-19 pandemic. Okay.
Hello?
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 Yes.
This is Councilmember Preciado. For some reason, I was blocked out of a closed session, but I've been listening on a regular session, so I'm present.
Okay. You're loud and clear. Okay, we're on item 6A. Would you like to?
Just briefly, from the direction that was given by the City Council at the last meeting and the concerns that were raised and direction given, we drafted an ordinance which was also reviewed by our city attorney that all places of business shall require all employees and also patrons, customers, the public to wear masks when they enter into their store or in indoor areas if people are lined up. It does give some exceptions, which we were required to do as well. It explains what a facial covering is. It also, in section 5, that is the penalty, and that is the penalty amount as per the municipal code. It is considered an infraction. The first offense is $50, second offense is $100. And again, this is within a 1-year period. And the third and any subsequent violations within that year period is $250 each violation. I'm sorry.
It's in there.
It was a.
It's in the background.
Okay. Sorry. I thought we said something wrong. It also gives direction to the Avenal Emergency Services Director and the Code Enforcement to give regular reports to the City Council as to what is going on. And again, this is this action to ratify the direction that was given to staff at the last meeting. It is considered an emergency ordinance, and what we are asking that the council consider waiving both readings and make the appropriate findings that it is an urgency ordinance, and that this ordinance be put in place immediately upon approval by council.
Any questions?
Yeah. Will any bit, better said, would all businesses have to comply after this ordinance is included? Is there any, basically my question is, do all businesses have to abide by this resolution?
All commercial businesses as defined.
Okay.
And it could be a service as well, but it's considered a business.
Okay. I will not mention the name. I know there's two particular businesses in town that are not enforcing it at all. I have personally seen it. I have heard members of the community who have been telling, hey, what's the point of you guys passing given direction to make face masks mandatory for businesses if this particular business and this particular business they don't enforce it, you know. So just to be clear, there won't be exceptions made once this is passed. There will be, you know, fines distributed upon non-compliance.
Right. And our chief and director of emergency services can explain that better. The whole idea behind this is to get people to comply. If there's failure to comply after, you know, speaking with, contacting, whatever, that would be up to the discretion of whether it's a code enforcement or let's say even an officer goes in. But I'll let the chief actually address that as to how it's done. But compliance is the goal. That is the goal. Unfortunately, sometimes we have to cite a violation, and that's where the monetary amount, it's administrative, that would come back to the city. That's not what we want to do, but there is a reason why council decided to do what they would like to do. But understand, if there's one person and they don't have a mask on their face, first of all, if we have masks, we'll offer one, and that's what staff has been doing. But speak to them first and get them, you know, we want you to comply. But if, you know, people are over and over violating, then we would take the next step.
Yeah, I think after this resolution is passed, I would suggest no tolerance for any business, given that personally, I saw COs in a particular location. You know, COs, we have the concern of 600 cases plus, and here just a mile away from us, and COs are coming to businesses without masks. You know, not to point out specifically, but it's everybody. You know, I would say out of everybody, 50% comply in this particular business. So, you know, it needs to be. Talking to them hasn't worked out as good lately. It should be more about enforcement, and you know, I know a lot of cities that are doing fines, you know, and they're not $50. You know, they're way up there for non-compliance. Yeah, you know, the community is concerned, and I think that if we don't enforce it fully in some businesses, but we do in others, that would be considered, you know, not appropriate, not fair for the others. If one is lacking and that there's, you know, 20 businesses that are complying because of that one, we wouldn't even be able to enforce it. You know, how can we enforce it? This one, we're not doing anything about this one, but we're telling everybody else. You know what I mean? It's just a concerning issue.
Thank you.
All right. Any other comments? Or?
It would
I
be
can
our,
speak to that.
Oh, go ahead.
If you don't mind, or so we had a meeting last week or so with code enforcement, and they'll be the primary person responsible. Code enforcement and community development have been out educating businesses over the last couple of weeks. So code enforcement is the primary, and we talked about at our meeting that they're going to adjust their work hours so they can be there in the evenings when probably a lot of the violations are probably occurring. So we'll be there to back them up. Internally, it's not something I really want my young officers, patrol staff to deal with. So it's going to be handled at a supervisor level coming from my office. And I think that's probably a better approach for us, as we're, you know, it's tricky times for us on a good day, and then you throw in the mask policy. So we'll be there to assist code enforcement and be good role models as well.
What schedule is code enforcement currently running for you know, to monitor compliance? Are there a particular time, a particular day, daily?
They're staggering. They're being flexible with their hours. Not every day. You know, we don't want, maybe one day they'll flex from noon till 8, and maybe the next day will be from 10 to 6. So that's like the first step, is to be in the area, in the business community when people are actually out, as opposed to a 7 to 4, which you might get the noon traffic in the early afternoon. So that's the flexibility, and they have been doing that for several weeks now. I think this ordinance, though, gives us even though there was direction given, we actually have a document that we can provide to the business owners and members of the public too, of what is expected of them.
Have there been any fines given out to any business?
No,
Zero?
no, not that I'm aware of, and I'm certain that Mr. Chavez would have let me know.
Okay, I know for a fact there's violations. Some violations that I have seen immediately. I let you know.
Yes.
So if we don't enforce a policy, the policy becomes void. In my opinion, taking it from a business perspective, if a company policy is not followed, if you don't enforce it with everybody, again, it's in a business sense, it's a discrimination.
The first step was administrative. That up until this point, once we vote on this, and if this is approved, then it's going to be a mandatory thing. That if they don't comply, guess what? There's going to be a consequence that will follow.
Okay.
So.
And after passing this ordinance, does it become effective immediately or?
Immediately.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
If I could just have another minute on this, just real quick here, and not to say the virus, I'm here to tell you the virus is here. I'm not here to downplay it, but I do see the numbers quite often to the point where it keeps me up at night. But the prison out here, the numbers have reduced, the recoveries have increased, and the numbers are just coming out a little bit at a time. So I know that should be some comfort, but I agree, you can't let your guard down. You still have to take care of yourself, but it's not the big, 150 at a time we were seeing. I might see like 3 or 4 over the course of a week. That's about where they're at.
It's just a side note, and as the chief has said, this is very real, because I've had relatives lose their loved ones to this. So I take this very seriously. You know what? And we are in a nation of choices. And you know what? If I'm told this will keep me safe, keep my loved ones safe, by all means, you know what? I am going to choose to wear this. Now, unfortunately, there will be some people who will fight this. Never mind that it will help them and keep them safe. But, we do what we can and we move forward. So with that in mind, any other comments, questions?
On the weekends, are the code enforcement work on the weekends, like Saturday and Sunday?
They have they didn't this last weekend. Let me step back. I believe on Sunday we had one person out. The weekend before, yes, they did. And then the weekend before would have been the council meeting. So that's just when they were starting to flex.
A suggestion, and I don't know if there's anything that you would need from us, Chief, in order to, for police. I think personally this would be the most effective, along with code enforcement.
Mr. Ramirez, can you put your mic up?
Sorry. While the police officers perhaps they're doing, they're patrolling, just simply observe if businesses are complying. Sometimes what I have done, I took it on my own hands after this was passed on the past meeting, to just park outside every business and observe compliance. And that's how I can tell you that there's not very many on two particular ones. It's just something to consider. I don't know if that's within the the emergency services as USI director, or if you need anything from council to make that happen.
No, I'm good.
Okay. Okay.
I can tell you on the flip side of that, I do some grocery shopping at one of the major grocery stores in town, and as well, and I was happy to see some 100% compliance.
Yeah, a lot of people are complying, and that's.
They might have saw me walking in front of the mask, I don't know, but everybody had a mask.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. So if no more questions or comments, we need a motion for the approval of this emergency ordinance.
I so make a motion to approve this emergency ordinance.
Okay, we have first or second. Okay, first and second.
Councilman Hernandez, Councilman Ramirez,
Aye.
Councilman Preciado,
Aye.
Mayor Ovalle.
Aye. 4-1 absent. Okay. So we have the 4/5.
Thank you.
All right. Moving on. We move on to 6B, which is consider request for small business loan.
Yes, Mayor, members of council, the small business loan program actually did very, very well, and the funds were expended very, very quickly. We were able to help 16 applicants, and then at $3,000 apiece, and then another application for $2,000. Rumbo Travel was the last to submit, and between their submittal and Mercado Latino's submittal was just a few minutes. However, it was the first come, first serve, and we were going forward as such. Mr. Romero is asking council's consideration to, if they would actually fund him the $3,000. His travel agency has taken a big hit. He filled out the appropriate application. He has his business license, so he's met the criteria that was established. Of course, city staff could not provide the funding because there was only a certain amount that was actually approved. And I'm not certain, but I believe Mr. Romero had wanted to address the council, but I can't tell who's on the phone. Mr. Romero, are you online?
Melissa, this is Fernando. I didn't see him online, and I didn't get any notification that he was actually dialing in.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Again, staff cannot do this. Council committed a certain amount, and that is what has been expended. We're just asking for council's discussion. If there's any direction or action, it'd be totally up to council. Again, it's a request for $3,000 for the small business loan.
Is he the last one to apply?
He is the last one. We actually waited. We understood there might be a few more, but this is the only application we have received. That was over and above the 17 that were funded.
The only,
if I may.
My only comment to this would be that, we opened it again. What if 10 more come?
Was the loan denied because it completely ran out of money, or there was partial amount? What was the reason for his denial?
See, the Mercado Latino got 2,000 that was left over after the 50 had been expanded. So it was 48,000, and the last one got 2,000. So he was the very last one to apply, but the money ran out.
May I make a comment?
Go ahead.
May I? Yes, so at this time, he's the last one, the only one that had applied. I would like to make a motion to award him with $2,000 because I don't think it also would be fair for Mercado Latino only receive $2,000. So make it fair. I would like to make a motion to allow Rumbo Travel access to
You were fading out. We could not understand the last thing that you said. Are you still online? Mr. Preciado.
He said a motion, Mr. Preciado made a motion to allow $2,000 for Rumbo Travel for their business.
Okay, is that what you understood?
I'm glad you heard.
Okay.
I couldn't hear.
So there is a motion on the table.
I will second that.
Okay. First and second, roll call, please.
Councilman Preciado, Councilman Hernandez, Councilman Ramirez,
Aye.
Mayor Ovalle.
Aye.
Yeah. Let me see.
And just to clarify, this was for 2,000.
Yes.
Is that
Yes,
okay? Just want to make sure.
If I may, this is Mike Schulte. So I know that the other council member dropped off. If the council wants to try and include his vote later to see if he dials back in, the council could certainly table this matter to the end of the council meeting to include his vote. It's going to pass anyways, but if the council wanted to get his vote, that's something the council could do.
Mr. Preciado, are you back online?
Yes, I'm back online. Can you repeat that again, please?
Go ahead and ask for his vote.
Councilman Preciado, do you approve a motion that you made for $2,000 for Rumbo travel? It was seconded by.
All right, thank you. Is there one absent?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. So moving on, we move on to item number 7, which is the activity report, special presentations and committee reports. Public Works, you're on.
Good evening, Mayor and members of council. As you see in your report, Panda Koala is just about finished with their second phase of the Salindolito development. They have 2 houses that are really close to the final inspections for occupation. They've also started 2 new homes on the 300 block of Ventura Street. Our clinic is progressing well. They're working on the parking lot right now, as well as the building has come along very well. And the Avenal Developers LLC is continuing to move dirt. That area is progressing well. They've done quite a bit out there. It's really looking good. Our code enforcement is still working on property and vehicle and weed abatements, not as much as they are working with the businesses with this COVID-19. Anthony has been working with Lupe to educate the business owners of the new mandate from the governor regarding the wearing of face coverings. And they did all week continue to monitor. I can say that tomorrow, Lupe will be working from 1 o'clock till 7 o'clock. And then on Saturday, he is planning on going out 10 to noon to check on businesses. So it's a little bit rough when we only have 1 code enforcement officer to be in every store all day long. It's impossible. So we're doing the best we can. Now with this being ratified, they can start giving out the warnings or citations or whatever's going to be necessary to get the businesses to comply. Parks and landscape, we're continuing to maintain all of our landscape areas. We still have our playgrounds closed due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and we have opened a second restroom at Rice Park, and we're continuing to clean those on a daily basis and make sure that they're open even on the weekends. Animal control is continuing to do their rescues and all of their services. They are doing the social distancing practices when we have Corcoran bringing in dogs or when rescue is coming to pick up. We're continuing to maintain our streets. We have been doing some patching and work out on Plymouth Avenue. And we've been working with our city engineer. The bid package for the San Joaquin Street reconstruction project was sent out on June 23rd. There'll be a pre-job showing July 23rd and a bid opening on July 30th. Hopefully we'll be able to start that sometime early to mid-September. Still working with the city engineer on the feasibility study of the 18-inch transmission lines, and we are continuing to maintain our distribution system. Our wastewater collections, it's been going well. Last month, we only had 2 calls for sewer plugs. They happened to both be on the city side, and it was due to the sanitizing wipes or baby wipe type of rags that get plugged in our system. And we're still working with maintaining our vehicles and buildings and reporting to everybody we need to report to. So are there any questions?
Questions for Scott? No, no questions, Scott. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Moving on is the event and theater and event center activity report. Humberto. Humberto, let's see. Is anybody able to hear him besides us?
No, he needs a microphone.
Okay. No, you're not coming through. Okay.
We've had a solid month here so far. One of the major things we got taken care of was the Spectrum. They've come out and they've given us they've gone ahead and reinstalled their internet service here at the theater. We are now looking at.
Hang on, Fernando, are you able to hear Humberto?
Yeah, he's coming through now.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right,
okay, there we go.
you.
All right, all the levels look good. So we now have our own in-house decent internet speeds here. So now we can continue hosting our city council meetings and any other meetings in the future we may need to host publicly through Facebook, through Zoom, through anything else. The day after, we took the time to reconfigure the network, so that way we have our security system up and running again. ADT, the security cameras and such. The mesh network, just the little hockey pucks that we use to ensure that all the Wi-Fi in the facility is accessible at in any part of the theater. Starting on June 16th, every Monday and Wednesday, I've been working with the recreation department to distribute student lunches to students. It's been we're hitting about 100 to 125 participants per day, so we're looking pretty solid there. On June 24th, we went ahead and tested some equipment to see what we can do as far as hosting a drive-in movie goes. We worked with PD to make sure the parking situation was solid. Our FM transmitters, so we can push out audio to the car's radios. That way we're using that instead of individual loudspeakers. Our projector is good to go. It's capable of hosting films outside at the come evening time. Around June 26th, we went ahead and took care of the Kings County Fire Department, allowed us to film a safety video to help out with the 4th of July ceremony. We didn't have our own celebration here, but we did want to have a sort of a safety video to go out to both parents and children alike, just to make sure they're handling fire, both fireworks and any fires in the home, managing a stove comfortably. Along with that, I've been helping out the recreation department with their online Kid Spot program, both editing videos and scheduling the posts throughout the week. Upcoming tomorrow, we have our first outdoor film. We are playing Pay It Forward. We're going to be starting that film at 7:30, so we hope to see you all then. It's been a long time coming with COVID-19 not being able to host events, but I'm really happy that we're able to do this. And well, I hope to see you again. Any questions?
Questions for Humberto? No. All right, Humberto, thank you.
Mayor, may I make a comment?
Absolutely.
I would like to thank Humberto, and I'm sure Tony was involved somewhere along the way. Humberto, he is the individual that was able to, and I'm not sure exactly how that works, to be able to transmit what is going on the screen into each radio, as long as you have it tuned in. How he did that, I don't know, but I want to thank him. It's just like the old drive-in movie, so
yeah.
I want to personally thank him for that.
All right.
And I apologize, I was texting to make sure I had one of my staff members on the line because she has a report.
Thank you. All right. Okay, then we'll go to 7B, special presentations. There is none. So we're moving on to item number 8, which is public comment, announcements, and scheduled appearances. Sanji.
Any person may directly address the city council agency on this time at any items of the agenda or any other items of interest to the public that is within subject matter jurisdiction of the city council, successor agency. State law prohibits any members of the city council agency from commenting or acting on matters not on the agenda. 3 minutes are allowed per person. And I have a couple of letters that I'm just gonna enter into the record. One is from Mr. Christopher Mendoza. Another one is from Gustavo Morion. Another one is from Veronica Aguirre. Howard
Nadler.
Kindler.
Howard Nadler.
Yeah, Howard Hindler. And then I have another one from Don. And I have another one from, I can't read his, he's from 729 Shasta.
Santian?
Yeah, Santian. And then I have another one that was entered by a proud and productive member of our community and society.
Okay.
And then another one from Isela Jimenez, Principal and Community Engagement Coordinator. And the last one is from Mr. Fausto. And all are going to be entered into the record.
Thank you. Okay, so at this moment, if there's somebody who would like to make a comment.
Yes, I would like to make a comment. My name's Howard Nadler. I'm one of the people that submitted the letter that you guys just talked about. So I am the lead teacher at Sunrise Continuation High School. I've been in that job for 8 or 9 years now. And I would like to comment. I'm informed that there are some issues about funding for Avenal PD, how many officers Avenal PD has. And, you know, I just, along with my letter, I want to let everyone know just what an outstanding job I think Avenal PD does. Avenal is a unique community. It's a combination of economic uncertainty, isolation, and nothing to do for the kids. So it's a delicate balance. Trying to balance community safety and community policing is difficult. I couldn't be prouder of the partnership that I feel we've had with Avenal PD ever since I've been at Sunrise. They are always available if I call. I have cell phone numbers. Because every day, some of you may not know me by name, but you probably see me standing in front of the district office, greeting students, talking to parents, making sure the day gets started safely. I do the same thing at 3 o'clock every day when we're let out. And trust me, I've been in that park more than once to stop an altercation that was going to lead to violence. Avenal PD has always been there for me. About 5, 6, 7 years ago, we started having food events. And one of the major things we wanted to do was bring closer relations between students, family, and Avenal PD. When we have those food events, some of them are just barbecues, some of them are holiday meals. When Ms. Jimenez came on board, she was completely supportive. Chief Stivers, you know, Officer Storm, all kinds of Avenal PD show up on a regular basis, and that has helped to break down barriers within the community. A lot of you young people in the community, no surprise, they don't trust Avenal PD, but especially in these uncertain times, to try to make any changes to what is going on is, this is not a time to try to save money. This is a difficult situation. And I really value Avenal PD there to support the schools, Sunrise Continuation High School, and myself personally. That's all I got to say.
Thank you for your comment. Anybody else?
Hello, can you hear me?
You're loud and clear.
Hi, this is Sally Jimenez, and like Mr. Nadler said, I just have a comment. I would like to read my own letter, if that's okay.
Very good. We have 3 minutes.
Okay, so being a lifelong Avenalian, I can say that there's a drastic difference between having a substation. When I was young, growing up, we had Kings County Sheriff Department out in Avenal, and although they did the best that they could at the time with limited resources, and Avenal Avenal was just a revolving door for officers. It was difficult to have any preventative measures in place. They responded in emergency situations, but having a police department with dedicated officers that know the community, our families, and our challenges has been so much better for Avenal. As a school administrator, I can attest to the efficiency of APD. Not only are they available, but they take a community outreach approach to prevent crimes and build trust with the people of Avenal. They have always gone above and beyond to serve our community and get involved in all aspects associated with the city and Reef Sunset Unified, from teen pageants, graduation ceremonies, and barbecues with alternative ed, as Mr. Nadler said. I can't speak for all departments in other cities, but I can say without a doubt that having Avenal Police Department has made a huge difference with our youth, and it is a blessing. So I just wanted to share that with you guys.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment. Anybody else?
Yeah, my name is Juan Ruiz. I'm the principal at Avenal High School. First, I'd like to thank the city, Rotary, and the police department for supporting us during graduation and during the parade. It was an amazing parade, and loved the way the community came together. And so I wanted to thank the city, Rotary, and the police department. And having heard some of the other comments, I believe it was about 8 years ago when we still had the sheriff, and the city made a decision to hire their own police department. And as the principal at Avenal High School, I've seen a huge difference just in discipline and crime that has happened. When I first came about 10 or 11 years ago to Avenal, discipline at the high school was out of control. There was a lot of things going on that the sheriff department was struggling to deal with. And so when the city made the decision to have their own police department, I think is one of the best decisions that they've ever made. We steadily have seen discipline and the crime and at the high school and in Avenal decline. And I think that's a huge reason is because of the police department. They have built relationships with our students. They've built relationship with the staff. Their police department, we know who they are on a personal basis because they have gone above and beyond to build those relationships. And so hearing what we just said, I believe that, and I know that if anything changes, we will start to see changes in Avenal, not for the better, but for the worse. And once again, I just want to thank the city for all the support that they've always provided us at the high school. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Anybody else?
Hi, yes, Blanca Rodriguez here, principal at Avenal Elementary School. I'm piggybacking off of the same sentiments as my fellow administrators here. I just want to speak out for the Avenal Police Department and just say, having worked with him at 2 different sites, at Reef Sunset Middle School and at Avenal Elementary, we've felt so much support from them over the years in all matters. They've been at our community events. They're ready on call whenever we need them, regardless if it's the officer that's assigned to schools or not. I think we've probably met and have communication with all of the officers because they're also readily available when any situation arises at our sites. So I just wanted to share the same sentiment as my fellow administrators. And also thank you to the Recreation Department for allowing me to be a part of the summer reading program.
Thank you. Thank you for your comment. Anybody else?
Hi, this is Veronica Aguirre.
You're loud and clear.
Okay, I think it's great that all the school administrators have come out and shared their, you know, their sentiments and everything. It's always great to hear other people come and be a part of these types of meetings, and especially express their concerns for, you know, children and public safety. But there's still one more impending problem that continues, and that's public health that continues to be ignored. We continue to get reports in regards to the horrific smells that come from the Avenal landfill. I received a number of reports the other day of it smelling so bad that people were nauseous. I would be happy to share these reports that people get online and submit these reports constantly. And they were addressed by the Air District, and they are saying that from what they understood, we are getting trucks from Baker Commodities that are coming in with dead, rotted chickens, and they're parking on the side of Skyline. And that was the reason for the terrible smells that were coming through town yesterday morning. So I don't know if this is acceptable. Do we allow this kind of stuff? Are big trucks with disgusting, nasty, rotten truckloads of chickens, you know, are allowed to park on the side of Skyline Boulevard for hours while they go and apparently are walking down and getting tacos? I really don't know how true that is, but that's what is being said. So I really hope that as council members, you know, Public Works or anybody could continue to maybe do some of their sort of investigation and find out what exactly is going on, because you know, it's not getting any better. And I think that not only should we address issues like public safety, but you also should consider public health. And it is a nuisance to the community who can't even enjoy walking outside, you know, going for a walk, you know, exercise or anything like that. So anyways, thank you.
Thank you for your comment. And just as a follow-up, that issue has been addressed by the landfill already.
The truck issue?
I'm sorry?
The truck issue was addressed by the landfill? Because
yes,
the landfill told the Air District that that truck didn't belong, wasn't going to them. So I don't know how the landfill addressed that issue. If they had told Claire, the inspector that came out from the Air District, that had nothing to do with them. So I would like more information, though. If you said that it's been addressed, that would be wonderful, so that I can close my case and I can also report it to the other agencies that have been following up with this as well.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else for public comment?
Yes, my name is Artemisa Leon, and I am part of the community. I'm also a parent and also a school employee, but I'm going to speak as a parent and as a community member about the Avenal Police Department. I've been here most of my life, and yes, we've had different agencies in our community. Sorry, Avenal Police Department. I have seen a change. And now that everything is running smooth, everything is great, everybody knows everybody, I would want for it to stay the same. Like they mentioned this, it's not a time to have any, save any money. We need them as much as we can. So as a community member, I am in support of keeping them and not having any type of budget cuts in that area. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. Anybody else for public comment?
I'd like to make a comment.
Go ahead. You're coming loud and clear.
I'm sorry. Can you state your name?
My name is Diana Enriquez, and I am also from the community. I used to coach cheer. This last year was my last year, but I coached for 12 years. And as a coach and a community member, it was important for me to communicate when I had girls and cheerleaders out practicing early mornings. We practice early mornings and we practice late in the evenings. And it was important for me to have communication with Avenal PD, and they would drive by and make sure that the girls were safe. There was numerous times when we had cars just driving by and buying. We would give them a quick call and they'd come by and help us. So it's very important that they stay with us, because we do have a good communication with them, with the schools, with coaches, with sports programs. And eliminating them, it's going to be more difficult for people in the community to continue giving back without their support and knowing that we have safety within the people around us. So I think it's important that we keep them with us.
Thank you for your comment. Anybody else for public comment? Is there anybody else on the phone or Facebook or? Okay. Chief?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I guess I'll speak as the Director of Emergency Services for right now. Just to give you guys an update, I will be attending a virtual meeting tomorrow on PG&E's public safety program as it applies to power outages in the communities during fire season. So it's been in the works for about 3 months, and tomorrow's the day. So I will definitely get the word out to Miss Melissa afterwards, probably Monday, after write our little report. So hope we have some questions answered as to why, when, and where power goes out as a result of the fire. So hope to bring that back to you sooner than later in the community as well.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Anybody else for public comment? Okay, hearing none, so we're moving on.
Prior to closing public comment, the letters received, can they be read during public comment? The letters received from the public, can they be read during public comment?
As stated by the city attorney, he said that I could read their name and that they were entered into the record. They will be in our minutes for the next meeting. Whoever wants a copy is more than happy. I will be more than happy to give them one.
The reason why is because on the previous council meeting, there was a member of the public who addressed a letter that wasn't read, and we did, here in the council, they said if that letter is submitted before the meeting is over, it will be read. However, it wasn't, and I was asked about that.
It's because we got clarification from our city attorney that we can address it as submitted by the public with their name, and it would be entered into the minutes as a public record.
Okay.
Yeah, and it is noted as an exhibit in the minutes. There were, I believe, 3 different pieces of correspondence. Okay.
Okay.
And if I can clarify, if a particular individual wants to read their own letter or someone else's letter and they show up to do it, they can. But if they want to submit a letter, the only requirements are that that it get to the council members via the agenda process, and that you note in the record that the particular individual has submitted a letter. But that's all that's required. So as you can imagine, if on some subjects you get a lot of letters, and so reading them all into the record isn't necessarily, it's certainly not required, and it's not necessarily appropriate.
Thank you, Mr. Attorney.
Hey, you're welcome. I'll mute myself again here.
Yes, sir. So we're moving on to item number 9, which is public hearing. Continued joint hearing of the City of Avenal Successor Agency, RDA, Trust Obligations Fund, Public Finance Authority.
Yeah. Mayor and members of council, at the June 25th, 2020 City Council meeting, there was a discussion, which these discussions actually took place during the workshop 1 and 2, that there are, because of COVID and basically mainly because of COVID, there are just a couple of financial uncertainties going forward into the new fiscal year. At that time, staff recommended that the council adopt operating budgets because we are required to have a budget in place by July 1st of each year. And that would be for the city, successor agency, RDA, debt obligation, and the Public Financing Authority. And what we had stated is that we will monitor over the next couple of months to see where the finances are, what we hear from the state, what we hear from the county. And somewhere in probably September, we will then review the budgets again to kind of see where we are. Again, that being the first quarter. And we could open up a public hearing again at that time. Otherwise, we'd be continuing over and over and over again. We would get the financial updates during those meetings or that meeting. As of today, there are no new updates that we're aware of, only that there is CARES Act funds available for local government. we submitted our application. This does have to do with the budget, so if you'll allow me. We did submit that application, which opens up us to be able to seek reimbursement only for allowable expenses. So that would be the only new update that we have. So our recommendation, staff's recommendation, is to open the public hearing for comments and then to request motion to close the public hearing. We would reschedule a subsequent public hearing if, in fact, we do go ahead with a review the first quarter.
Very good. So at this moment, we're opening the public hearing for the city budget. Anybody who would like to comment? Humberto, anybody trying to chime in on this? Okay, very good. So request a motion to close public hearing.
Right, if we could. And we would re-advertise. We would actually send out another notice for public hearing.
Okay.
In the future.
So we request a motion to close hearing and bring it back.
Yes, at the appropriate time.
At the appropriate time, excuse me. Is there a motion on this?
I will go ahead and make the motion.
Okay, we have a first. Is there a second? Okay, we have first and second. Roll call,
Councilman
please.
Hernandez. Councilman Ramirez.
Aye.
Councilman Preciado.
Yes.
Mayor Ovalle.
Aye. 4-1 absent. Very good. So we're moving on to item number 10, old business. Consider second reading and adoption of ordinance 2020-4. Ordinance proposed changes to Avenal zoning ordinance.
Yes, thank you, Honorable Mayor, members of the council. This is Fernando Santillan speaking, Community Development Director for the City of Avenal. And as you may recall, on June 25th at the last council meeting, the City Council voted to introduce this ordinance and waive the first reading, which would amend our current zoning ordinance to add language to make it easier to enforce our RV and trailer parking rules in residential areas. And it would also add language regarding the hours and the distances that cars must be moved in order to be in compliance with the zoning ordinance. At this time, staff recommends that the council make the following findings in the staff report and waive the second reading and adopt the attached ordinance.
Okay, thank you. Is there any questions on this? Okay. So as recommended, we need to waive the second reading and adopt the ordinance. We need a motion to.
So I'll go ahead and make the motion to waive the second reading and approve this ordinance.
Okay, there's first. Is there a second? Okay, we have first and second.
Councilman Hernandez. Councilman Ramirez.
Aye.
Councilman Preciado.
Aye.
Mayor Ovalle.
Aye. 4-1 absent. Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, 10B, consider extending local emergency declared on March 24th, 2020.
Yes, Mayor, members of council, at the June 25th meeting, I thought that the 21 days and then extension of another 21 days would take us into August. I miscalculated, so I'm asking that the council consider extending for 21 days, an additional 21 days, the local emergency, and that the local emergency still exists. And this is required at each meeting. So I ask that council consider extending.
Okay. Is there questions on this?
And so would it be for 42 days or is it
It's for a total of 42 days. Yeah, I fell a little short from the last meeting.
Is there a motion?
So I'll go ahead and make the motion to reaffirm the local emergency.
Okay, very good. Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Okay.
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 Councilman Hernandez? Councilman Ramirez?
Aye.
Councilman Preciado?
Aye.
Mayor Ovalle?
Aye. 4-1 absent. Okay. It's been extended. Okay. So we move on to item number 11, new business. A, consider SB1 project list for road maintenance and rehabilitation accounting funding, the Road Repair and Accountability Act of 2017.
Good evening again, Mayor and council members. Again, we started this in 2017 with the SB1 funding because we have to make up a project list and then get it approved by city council by resolution. It's the time of year that we have to report this again, and thanks to Don for putting this together. We met the deadline for submitting our project list, and this is the last part of it to make it official. So the purpose of this report is to seek compliance with the state's accountability requirements for the use of SB1 funds. In fiscal year 2021, City of Avenal expects to receive approximately $266,479 in SB1 funds. And according to the California Department of Finance estimates, total funding in the amount of $4,346,170 over a 10-year period of time. April 28th of 2017, the governor signed the SB1 bill, the Road Repair and Accountability Act of 2017. Starting in 2017, the bill began to generate new revenue for the state and local transportation projects through increases in gasoline and diesel fuel excise tax, along with an increase in vehicle registration fees. Portions of the revenues will be directly allocated to cities for pavement maintenance, safety improvements, and complete streets, enhancing facilities and walking and bicycling. Other funding will be available on a competitive basis. In order to receive direct allocations of annual SB1 revenues, all cities must adopt a city council resolution and submit a list of projects to the California Transportation Commission by July 15, 2020, with information regarding the purpose, the proposed use of funds related to location, scope, cost, and expected useful life of the project. Our SB1 project list was developed by Rob Williams and myself with the assistance of Brian Skaggs, our city engineer. The proposed list is as follows. 7th Avenue Road project, which would be from Skyline to San Joaquin at an estimate of $365,000. Monterey Street project from 7th to San Joaquin at an estimate cost of $525,000. Mariposa Street Road project from 7th to San Joaquin at $525,000, and the Avenal Cutoff Road project for $4,060,000. Since California Transportation Commission is requiring annual reporting before fiscal year 2021 city budget review, if the project list is approved by the City Council, fiscal year 2021 budget will include revenues and expenditures for use of SB1 funds received. The proposed action is not a project under the California Environmental Quality Act, as it is an administrative activity that will not result in direct or indirect physical changes in the environment with the CEQA guidelines section 15378. Our recommendations is to review staff report. The public hearing was a misprint on that. And by motion, approve the fiscal year 2021 city streets budget, Fund 30, to include SB1 revenues, estimate of $266,479, and street expenditures of SB1 in an amount not to exceed estimated funding by the state. Funds shall be used for SB1 projects as noted and included in Attachment A. And 3, by resolution, approve the SB1 project list and forward to the California Transportation Commission no later than July 15, 2020. Our fiscal impact is the adoption of the SB1 project list is necessary to receive road maintenance and rehabilitation account funding. Are there any questions?
Any questions for Scott?
Scott, I do have a question. It was just brought to my attention and I reviewed the resolution. It states that under one of the whereas, it says the city has undergone a public hearing. Angie informed me that no public hearing notice was submitted or posted. Is there a conflict there? Just a question.
Well, we discussed it this afternoon, myself and Angie and Dawn,
Okay.
and we came to the conclusion there was not a public hearing needed, but
Okay.
if we do, then I guess we need to start this over and ask for an extension from the state.
Right. And if in fact, let's say the resolution is incorrect, we should be okay. But I think just to be safe, I would ask the council table this or at least not take any action. We want to make certain that we have all of our requirements in place. And I apologize, I didn't know until just a few minutes ago. I would rather us go the safe route and make sure we've done it right, and we can ask for forgiveness from the state.
Okay, so
that would be my recommendation.
Okay, because the deadline is July 15th.
And that is where Scott has stated to request an extension from the state.
Okay, all right.
Are we okay with that, Scott?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
So, with that said.
So the motion would be to table this item?
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so I'll go ahead and make the motion to table this item for the upcoming meeting.
Okay, is there a second?
I will second the motion, but I also have a question for legal counsel. Does he have a comment on that?
Are you online, legal counsel?
I am. I had trouble unmuting myself. So are you asking if I've reviewed this particular issue yet?
Yes. Do you have a comment? Would there be a conflict without the public hearing?
No. So I think that what is suggested here by the city manager is that that this matter come back for a vote to the city council, but that staff is going to request an extension so that no approval is necessary tonight. Is that right, Melissa?
Yes, we were just asking that any action be tabled tonight. I want to make certain that we have met all requirements prior to submitting the statement, because there's a little bit of a conflict in the resolution. And again, I was just told that there was no public hearing that was noticed, and I want to make sure that we do it correctly.
Yeah, so I would say I think under the circumstances that's appropriate. Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, and it's line number 6 as to whereas the city has undergone a public hearing process.
Right.
Understood.
Totally
yeah.
overlooked that this afternoon when we discussed this. So I apologize.
No, and so make sure to engage us on that, Melissa, if you need us tomorrow, okay?
Okay,
After
thank you.
you've looked at it. Thanks, sure.
Thank you, Scott.
Okay, so there was a first and second.
Councilman Hernandez. Councilman Ramirez.
Aye.
Councilman Preciado.
Aye.
Mayor Ovalle.
Aye. So item has been tabled.
Thank you.
All right, so we move on to item 11B. Oh, goodness.
Mayor and members of council, I'm bringing to you our water shutoff policy. We've already undergone the ordinance change in order to bring this into fruition. With this ordinance and the shutoff policy, if there was one benefit of COVID-19, it was the fact that the governor's executive order required that no shutoffs are done until the declaration of emergency has lapsed. So what I presented to you is the water shut-off policy, what is required as to delinquent notices, there's a timeline narrative as to the first month would be the billing going out. The second month would be the billing is due, and the first notice would go out to, and a 10% penalty would be assessed. In month 3, the second utility bill would go out and a courtesy call would be made to the customers. Also a late notice, the late notice number 2 for disconnection would be sent out along with an additional 10% penalty. The 4th month, when utility bill number 3 goes out, 10 days prior to that, a notice would be hung on the door that there would be an additional 10% penalty and that in 10 days their water would be shut off. Also attached with this information is several hardship forms, whether it be for being below 200% of the poverty level or a medical waiver or a declaration with a declaration of that you are on some sort of aid, whether it be Medi-Cal, SSI, CalWorks, CalFresh, General Assistance, WIC. All of those are a factor, and also an agreement for a payment arrangement. And all of this information goes on to explain how this would be instituted. There is also copies attached in the required 6 languages, 5 or 6 languages. So what we are requesting is by resolution, a adoption of the written water interruption policy, and so that we can go forward with this when the declaration of emergency ends.
Good.
If you recall, Mayor and members of council, we brought the ordinance to you, which enabled us to do this, but this is putting the policy in place as to how this will work. Thank you.
Any questions or comments? Okay. If not, we need a motion to adopt the new water services continuation policy to be in compliance with SB 998 and Government Code 116900. Is there a motion?
I will go ahead and make the motion.
Okay. First, is there a second? Okay, first and second, roll call, please.
Councilman Hernandez. Councilman Ramirez.
Aye.
Councilman Preciado.
He's there.
Councilman Preciado. Mayor Ovalle.
Aye.
Yes.
Okay, good. 4-1 absent. Very good. Okay, so we move on to item number 12, which is correspondence, announcement, and closing comments. Correspondence,
There is no correspondence.
Very
Other
good.
than what we received.
Other than what we've received for public comments.
Okay, very good. Any Facebook comments? Closing comments? No? All right. Closing comments, Mr. Hernandez?
Monthly distribution. Yesterday, Wednesday, we catered to 175 community members. Great day. I would like to thank the police department for patrolling. I also like to thank public works and city personnel for helping out from
All right, thank you, senor. Closing comments, Mr. Ramirez?
Yeah, so I just wanted to touch base on the importance of using a face mask. It's very important. As you guys know, there was an ordinance passed today, which enables the city and staff to enforce the use of face mask. I do encourage the community to report any kind of violations to this, because it is a serious issue. And then I would like to following due procedure, I would like to ask the mayor if he would consider to put on the agenda. To amend the resolution that was passed regarding the face mask, if non-compliance is observed, to increase the penalty amount.
Okay. To add that as an item for the next agenda. Okay.
That being the emergency ordinance?
Say that again?
The violation amount?
Yes, to the recently passed ordinance.
I will speak to the attorney as to how we can make that happen if that is the desire of council.
Okay, go ahead and just.
Okay.
Okay, and then I would like for the mayor to also consider another item for the agenda, which is for council. As this year is very impactful in a lot of ways. I would like for council to consider, for the mayor to consider, for us to receive reports of every departments to monitor. There's a lot of things that can be monitored, which is amount of employees, total payroll per month, productivity report, cost versus impact. Just to analyze all departments and see where they are with spending. We do have to be very conservative with the funds that we have this year. So I think that would be important just for council to, evaluate and consider and see if there's any changes that need to be made.
You know what, I think I understand what you're asking for, but let me ask the ones that are in the finances, what will it take to undertake such an item? Okay, so.
Can this be considered for the next agenda?
As a discussion item?
Just as a discussion item, just to bring a report with a few of the things mentioned, and just so we can see our spending, cost versus impact, particularly.
Well, it seems like it's a very.
It's a broad. It's a broad.
Brush.
I think
Okay.
it is.
So that's why I'm like, you know what? I mean,
So what you're asking for is basically an activity report? Is that?
Amount of employees, total payroll per month, productivity, cost versus impact, among other things. Just to evaluate all of our departments to know. When we spoke about a particular department that has been the topic for discussion, we're looking at the biggest one, but we need to overlook, to see everything.
So besides warranty expenditures, you want to see a breakdown of per department.
Yeah, I think it would be helpful to see, on a monthly basis, how much each department is using. And we do have an operating budget in place, which, this will go hand in hand for council to review as well.
Okay. Chief?
It could be done there, or I know that, like you said, it's a broad, it's a lengthy thing, to revise basically each department in the city. So it can be a separate report or included in the monthly one, just for purpose of council to review the departments and see whether funds are being spent properly.
Well, with that in mind, why don't we, since we'll just give direction to city manager, in that for her to get with supervisors of each department and just relay what he's asking for as far as a breakdown of, I guess, expenses,
Yeah, or it doesn't necessarily have to be an item on the agenda. It's just for council review.
That's fine. I'm just saying, that's why I'm referring to the city manager, just to get a report from
from each department.
Each department to say, you know what, this is what was spent, and this is big ticket items. Let's just say,
yeah,
this is what the money was spent on.
Right.
So
yeah. So
that's, okay. That's more or less, because I'm seeing it very broad, and I'm just like, okay.
Yeah.
Of course you gotta do it.
And it doesn't have to be provided in the next council meeting. It just, preferably, because I know that the finances are going to be taking a downfall. So just want to make sure we're spending okay on all departments. But of course, amount of employees, cost versus impact, total payer for a month, things like that. They really matter. Expenditures.
Okay. So that's something that they would work. Just bring forth and let you see. Hopefully that will be
okay.
Okay.
Will do.
Got it. Mr. Preciado, closing comments.
Yes, I would like to give special thanks to everybody who's got involved pushing out to the business regarding the new mandate requiring masks and taking that hand sanitizer and working together with council regarding protecting our community. I also want to give special thanks to all the community members who have been stepping forward and participating and giving the support to the police department. I will encourage everybody else who is listening or is coming to come to our council meeting and voice concerns, the support, and appreciation to every department that we have in the city. We're really trying to do the best for our community. And, times they believe we don't listen. We don't listen to their requests. We don't listen to their concerns. But I just want to tell them that, City Hall and doors are open to come with any concern. I also would like to ask Mayor and Council to consider adding an item on the agenda for the next one. We've been trying to get the study session and if necessary an action item on the agenda regarding bylaws, regarding reorganization of council. I believe it's necessary. Community is asking what are the steps, and fortunately, we asked a couple of times and haven't been placed on the agenda. So if necessary, I will make a motion to place it on the agenda. So I hope I do have a
Alvaro, you're not coming through very clear. We're having a difficult time understanding what you're asking for.
I apologize for that. The phone is not giving me good reception.
You're breaking up.
Can you hear me now better?
It's a little bit better.
Is that better? Can you hear me better now?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Well, I just want to give special thanks to city staff, Fernando, Luke Chavez, and Anthony Lopez for doing their best, reaching out to the business regarding mandates from the state and the last city emergency ordinance. I hope that the business and the community understand how critical it is to wear a mask and use safe distance and sanitize themselves. I also want to thank the community who stepped forward and is participating over the phone or Zoom, and the ones that are participating and give the support to the police department. I encourage everybody to come to our meetings and give the support to every department. Every department is really trying to do their best: public works, recreation, code enforcement, and planning. Also, I want to give a special thanks to the Planning Commission for really helping city council with their ordinance that they're kind of bringing out to us. But also, I would like to request an item on the agenda. We've been talking regarding study session, regarding bylaws, regarding reorganization. At the last couple meetings, we have requested it, but we haven't really got a straight answers. What are the bylaws and regarding reorganization, and community asking what are the steps and how do we proceed, and we really need to be informed so we can communicate with the community. So I would like to, if necessary, make a motion to have consensus of council if they would like to see that on the agenda. Thank you.
Just heard. What I'm understanding is you want to add a study session for the bylaws of the city council. Is that correct?
To reorganization of the city council.
For reorganization, is that? I'm sorry, Alvaro, but you're breaking up.
Yes,
so we're
yes, for reorganization of city council, bylaws, procedure. At this time, when we are getting legal attorney, he didn't have all the information requested, and we still haven't got anything. So we're still uncertain if it's in the bylaws or how we can move forward, because we really need to inform our community.
So was that a motion?
We good?
And what was the okay? And what was the motion for again?
Bring forth the bylaws to
Reorganization, I believe. That's what I understand. I'm only
Is
hearing part of it.
is that what the motion was for Councilman Priscilla?
Study session.
For a study session?
Yes.
Okay.
This is Mike Schulte, and if I may, first off, council member, I apologize. I know last council meeting I said I'm happy to produce a letter regarding the bylaws. I've done a little bit of research, and there isn't much to the city's bylaws, so I'm still trying to get information. I talked with Melissa maybe Tuesday or Wednesday of this week about getting documentation, and I just wasn't able to put anything together for tonight. But I will say, with regard to this, if there's a discussion or the council wants to have a discussion or, even a study session, first off, it doesn't require a motion. You just put it on the agenda if there's a desire to put it on the agenda. But then secondarily, if this is about reorganizing, I'm not sure I understand that correctly, but the way the council is organized, we could address that in a study session, and we could explain kind of how elections work and how the Brown Act works and how all that works. If you're talking about having a study session about reorganizing the council, we would certainly be able to address it during that study session, but it's complicated, and certainly we'd participate in that. So I guess what I'm saying is this: if you want to have a study session, fine. You don't even need a motion to do a study session. But reorganizing the city council takes more than just a motion and a council vote. The council itself can't really reorganize itself. That's not the way it works. So, but we can certainly participate in that meeting.
Right. What I understood is that Councilmember Preciado, that was his idea for a study session to discuss this so everybody understands how all of this works. I don't want to put, I hope I didn't misstate that. That's what I understood. We can certainly, if it's the majority of council would like, we can add it as a study session item in August.
Yes, like I mentioned before, we're still uncertain what are the bylaws, so we really need to inform.
Okay. I think we're on the right track.
We'll put it
All right.
in study
Got it?
Study session in August.
Okay, it's an item.
Okay, and I will say, so Melissa, we just need a little clarification on available documents and whatnot. So you and I can connect next week.
I sent that, just as information, I sent some documents to Mr. Farley, but I would also like to provide the copies of the ethics for council. It's just a document I think most of you received when you became council members, and just that we all review.
Yeah, we can add that in, no problem. So, okay, I apologize, thank you.
Do you think it'll take more than 45 minutes? Or
I don't
what do you
think
think?
so. I mean, it's just a study session. I mean,
Just to talk?
yeah.
We should be okay at 4:30?
I would think a 30-minute discussion would be fine, sure.
That would give us a little time for a break.
Okay.
Okay. So
All right.
4:30 on
August 13th.
Is it the 12th?
The 13th.
The 13th? Okay. Do that.
Okay. So moving on. City manager, closing comments.
All I have is the drive-in. I'm looking forward to tomorrow.
Amen to that. Yeah, popcorn.
Things are going as normal and smoothly.
Awesome. City clerk, closing comments.
Nothing to.
Since you're here, chief, closing comments. Awesome. Well, all I can say is, you know what, and it's been said before, this COVID-19 is very real. I've had relatives already who have lost loved ones to that. So my choice is to wear a mask. That way I'll protect myself, protect others, as well as my loved ones. So just stay safe.